Hello, everyone. In this new episode of the Arcane Astrology Talks, I had the privilege of sitting down with my friend Ryan Evans. He talks about his upcoming book that is going to be published and some of the principles that he is writing about whenever it comes to astrology and the correlation to nature herself. Ryan is a cut flower farmer and is deeply connected to nature. And I thought his insights about the correlations were not only humorous in true Ryan fashion, but also very thought-provoking. And then the conversation switched over to Pluto and Aquarius and what this means for astrology and astrologers in general, and how it can be the exposing of the underbelly of this. So I hope that you find Ryan hilarious because I know I do. He's a Sag and he has the best sense of humor. He brings so much levity, especially when we're talking about some of the heavier, controversial, arcane topics. So please enjoy, and you can find his details in the description below, where you can also find mine. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Smith, and I'm the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. And I have been doing a series in the past called the Arcane Astrology Talks. I had to take a little hiatus because of life, but I'm back to it. And this is a series where I have another astrologer come on, either a colleague, friend, or just someone that I really admire, to share about the things that are arcane, something that's more obscure that maybe other people who are studying or have an affinity for astrology have thought about or haven't thought about or want to learn. I find that each one of us that are astrologers, we really have something that we tend to gravitate towards that other people might not know a lot about. And so today I have my friend Ryan on here. And Ryan Evans, he has been studying astrology since 1991. And in 1997, he became a counseling astrologer. And then in 2006, he started studying with Stephen Forrest, and then in 2016 he became a master level astrologist and certified, and he's been teaching through the Stephen Forrest School of Astrology the last 4 years. And in the last 3 years, Ryan has been finishing up writing three different books. And so, Ryan, I want you to introduce what you want to talk about and, us just have fun and, you know.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. I really appreciate being here. And hello to all your watchers slash listeners. Again, it's an honor to be here and be able to, loquate, pontificate on my perception of astrology, which is a little bit different, augmented, I'd say, than many astrologers, based on my experience as an organic cut flower farmer for 30 years as well. Um, and so I have what I'd consider to be a relatively unique view on astrology, but one that when I talk to people about it, it's as well, I guess it's as simple as corn. So, and I guess that's probably where I'd want to start with saying something, your intro on the arcane and, less than engaged facets of astrology. I'm just going to start out by being a rascally rabbit. And I'm going to say, astrology, astrology, astrology doesn't work. Doesn't make s- Oh, you mean to tell me that some magic beam from somewhere in the center of the universe is going through a picture of a lady holding scales in the stars that was created by mushroom tea drinking Greeks. And that magic beam filtering through this picture of stars is hitting a planet like Pluto, a tiny ice rock out there, at the time of my birth. And somehow this magic beam filtered through this picture of some lady holding scales and hitting this icy rock is somehow landing in what they call as my fourth house. And somehow I happen to have some, deep psychological, emotional wounds regarding relationship and heart-centered spaces. Hmm. You mean to tell me that that's how astrology works? So here comes the rascally question for you, Jordan.
Okay. I'm turning on
How
my
does
hotspot,
astro
by the way.
how, how does astrology work?
Oh, wow. Well, that is a loaded question, I feel like. Um,
It's my favorite. Because when you're in the elevator, and somebody says, "Oh, you're an astrologer," and you say, "Well, I have saved lives." "Oh, yeah, well, you're an astrologer." So tell me, how does it work? And that's where we astrologers get a little bit, ooh, well, there's these magic beams that are coming through this picture of a lady holding scales hitting this icy rock and somehow finding itself in my Pluto in my fourth house and therefore compelling these situations to be created in my life. Yeah, that's
yeah,
how it works. And you have free will.
that, and I think, I was thinking about this recently. There is, I love psychology. I think a lot of us that are astrologers love like psychology on some level. But there's this psychologist who I've actually personally met. I worked in mental health before I became an astrologer. I was never licensed. I want to make that clear, but I was working within that field doing creative writing classes and um, for adolescents and helping them work through, their stuff that was coming up. This was at a rehab facility. And so I came across this guy who really talks about different psychological dynamics. Um, he has a doctorate and he's actually received a lot of pushback lately because and this is how it ties into your question, because it's made me think about this pertaining to astrology, is he's like a lot of the things that people come to psychologists for to get help, they always want to take them back to their childhood, but there's these things that they're meant to just sit with the person in the here and the right now, and actually taking them back isn't going to be helpful because most schools of thought dealing with psychology right now are all theoretical. And he said, and what no one is talking about is the empirical evidence of heredity and all of these things. And he was talking about, there are some people who have pathologies or personality disorders. And the theory is that these people are wounded and they come from trauma. And he was like, but in my practice, I started to experience that that's not always the case, that sometimes these people come from non-adverse backgrounds and yet they are like this. And also, if that's the case, then why are there people who come from adversity that actually they should be having some type of personality disorder or pathology, and yet they don't? And it made me think of evolutionary astrology and like why we choose what we choose, even our family systems and all of this. But it also made me think about how a lot is theoretical, but yet what I really love is that in how I was taught, it's very much about observation and correlation. And so understanding the archetypes, the archetypal nature helps you to be able to observe and to correlate, but you have to be able to actually listen to where someone is coming from, as opposed to just looking at a chart and like applying the archetypes. And I think that that's where it can change from being theoretical and archetypal to more an applied application, right? But it made me think about how a lot of people who do astrology, and we kind of were talking about this a little bit before, is we can get boxed into a school of thought, which is essentially it's a theory about this. And yet all spokes lead to the same hub. I like to say there's more than one way to get to Denny's. And so it makes me think of, how some people they get really upset when you talk about a different school of thought and they will challenge you because it's like that's what they know, that's what where their beliefs are based in is that school of thought. And that's why I love having different people, different astrologers come in here from different schools of thought to talk about things. So it kind of goes against that grain. But I digress. So I kind of answered that question, but I also that's something that's been coming up. And so, I think it's on par for even your style and your approach and your own inner resources and the way that you see life and applying. Because the way I experience you, Ryan, is you're someone who is has a natural inclination and is more of a natural soul, and you are observing the way things um, are birthed from Earth and the cycles within them, and then how that also is a process that unfolds evolutionary wise for, I would have to say, your clients and the transits and the things that you are even observing and correlating. Wouldn't that be accurate?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like Newton. Uh, so uh, gravity's always been around,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't just like, oh, it's 1312, maybe we should land on the Earth. No, it's always been around. We just didn't really know how and why. And then some dude had an apple fall on his head and say, oh, there's gravity. Well, for a long time, gravity was explained as theory, is the theory of gravity. And then just recently, scientists have detected gravitational waves, getting
Yeah.
closer to proving that gravity exists. Now, there's no arguing the fact that we can stand outside without floating up. The actual whys and the wherefores of that are actually, I think, still under a little a little conversation.
Yeah.
So if we take something as obvious as gravity and we still can't really fully explain it, that we can, say, oh, well, astrology happens because A plus B equals C. I mean, it's obvious, yes. No, we can, like you were talking before, we can easily substantiate astrology. Well,
Yes.
I've had 100 clients and 99.5% of them all gave me rave reviews, and the other one fell asleep because they didn't sleep the night before. So, that can,
Yeah.
prove that astrology works, but it doesn't talk about the mechanisms about astrology. Why is it that some folks can rationalize a magic beam coming from the center of the universe and then affecting, a very causal
Yeah.
approach to astrology? Mercury retrograde made me do it.
Right.
Oh, I can't wait for my moon to progress across my ascendant. Then everything's going to automatically be better because the little sign on the computer screen says so. Well, uh, that's fine. We can see correlation, we can see reflection, but we're not seeing necessarily, and I have yet to hear any astrologer give me any kind of satisfactory explanation on the hows and the whys that Pluto in Libra in my fourth house actually equates to what the book says might be an expression of Pluto and Libra in the fourth house.
Right.
Yet to hear it. And I will also say that until we astrologers can offer, at the very least, a rudimentary, satisfactory example, we astrologers are going to be right on that periphery of legitimate or illegitimate,
Pseudo, yeah.
which actually brings up the Pluto and Aquarius question. We're going to circle back around to that.
Perfect.
But and this is what I'm about to give you, I would call proprietary information. This is information that is going to be in my book, and so therefore hashtag trademark, copyright, whatever we astrologers are so, oh my gosh, is it the mind of God? Is it sacred geometry? Yeah, yeah. Is it musical tones and colors? And yeah, we can talk about all talk about it all like that if we really want to. But if you really want to know how astrology works, you got to look at corn.
I Tell me more.
What? What? The proof of astrology is corn. What the heck are you talking about, Ryan? Okay, so this is what I'd like for you to do. Forget astrology. Prove to me corn. What are you talking about? Prove to you corn. I just have an intention to plant a seed. I take that seed, I put it in the ground. Moisture and fertilization make that corn grow. And it grows, and I harvest the corn. That's right. I might even save some seed of that corn and plant it again next year. Or I'll eat that corn for my sustenance. And
Yeah.
then next year, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to plant corn. You know why? Because I have corn from last year. And I just described to you every single thing you need to know about astrology. Because the rules that govern the growth of corn, kids and campers, the rules that govern the growth of corn are the exact, precise, same rules that govern astrology. In fact, and here comes the shocker, Henry David Thoreau said it very well. Let's see, was Walden, what chapter was it? Was it the bean field? I'm not exactly sure. I should know this. But he said, heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. So the $1 million thing that I'm going to propose here in this sudden, shocking, and arcane astrology podcast episode is that astrology is a lie. In fact, it's misnamed. I'd go so far as to say it's misnamed on purpose. Because Lord knows we don't want you to have power. Okay, Ryan, you said some pretty controversial things here. Astrology is a lie. Astrology is a con control tactic.
And it's corn.
Whoa. And it's corn?
And
What
it's
the heck are you, what the heck are you talking about, dude? The rules that govern the growth of corn are the exact same rules that govern astrology.
yeah.
100%. This is the basis of my system and the basis of my upcoming book. So anybody who says this, you got it here first. It's corn. Or if we want to be a little more poetic, it's the sunflower.
That was my other question. I was like, what made you decide corn as opposed to something else?
It's pussy willow.
Yeah.
It is the and here's where I'm gonna wax with a relative new age-ism,
Do it.
just to throw in a little bit of the contemplative nature of humanity. Um, we can talk at length about the Davic realm.
Mm.
nature intelligences, nature spirits, and other formative forces of the
Yes.
intelligence of nature. And in 1997, I am that old. In 1997, I was also certified as a master teacher for star flower and gemstone essences out in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. So, way back in 97, part of our flower essence training was learning how to consciously connect with the intelligences of nature. It was awesome. And I also have to say, believe it or not, and I wouldn't recommend this for everyone because it can be kind of crazy making, but I'd like to say I maintain a constant communication and connection with the elemental forces of nature. Now, that's a little broad and bodacious, but uh, I do, and it's kind of interesting. So, when we really understand how how astrology works, all we're basically doing, and this is going to sound a whole lot worse than it is, but I'm going to say it just to be rascally. What we're basically doing is farming humans. Oh, no, 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 no. But we're cultivating the growth of the flower within, dude.
Yeah.
We're cultivating the growth of our own being. That's all we're doing on this planet. You know why? Because you're an animal. Me
That's right.
too.
Yeah.
I exist. You exist as an extension of nature on this planet. And you and I can, think that we're so spiritual, or we think that we're going to ascend into nirvana or heaven. There's a big place for us at our Uncle Joey's barbecue up
In
on
the
the other
sky.
side of some pearly gates on a cloud.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know about that. But what I do know is corn. What I do know is sunflowers. And of the 10 to 20,000 sunflowers I've grown in my life, I'd like to think that I know a little bit about them. And so I do know that I have to have the intention to plant it in the first place. That's before anything comes out of the soil, Aries. That's before you can see a darn thing. I have to have that intention. That intention has to go through calculations. I have to if-then statement it. I have to process it and imagine what the whole entire growth cycle of that seed is going to be. I have to enthuse it with intention, purpose, and meaning. And there's got to be an outcome to this. And then I have to put it into action. I've got to do all of these things to ensure the survival of this sunflower. It'll grow, it'll be, you know,
Got
eating
to
up the
nurture it.
eating up the yummy compost and opening its leaves to the sun. It'll start diversifying and branching out, putting out some flowers, need some bees to pollinate it, come into full blossom. Then it'll start to set seed. That seed will ripen. We harvest that seed. We use some seed. We store some seed. Some seed gets planted. Maybe we trade some seed. Maybe we mix our seeds with other seeds and we have some delicious mixed seed nut butter or something like that. Then we kind of process the old dead stuff and let that go into the ground and try to figure out exactly what it all meant before we take the seed and start a whole new cycle again. And you now know everything about astrology.
That is, I love this. Um, because I do feel, not even feel, I know astrology is, it's a natural science, just like planting, growing something is, and just like minerals, animals, plants, they all have a consciousness. It's just in different structures. We know this. And so what you're talking about also is that we aren't very much different than the other types of consciousness that emanate here on Earth. And the process of of growth, planting a seed, coming into form, nurturing it, seeing what else is seeded, right? Seeing what else um, unfolds, blooms, blossoms before, and then harvesting, and then before um, the decay that goes back into the ground to further nurture starts a cycle all over again. And so we're even talking about reincarnation, not just within like humans, but also I would say that's the process of reincarnation, even with the sunflower, right? And so I love how you're tying this together. Um, and it also helps us understand that we're not so fucking different, right?
Yeah.
So,
And the amazing thing about this is that I haven't even talked about Pluto.
yeah.
This has nothing to do with a made-up picture in the sky. Heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads, as below, so
Mm-hmm.
above. Okay. So as below, so below. So now we get into the next little piece about this that's very interesting that I want to talk about, since again we're on the Rebel Astrology channel. Um and that is and I'm going let's see, how do I want to phrase this? Because there's so many different pieces that come into this. This might begin the Pluto in Aquarius talk.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, throw that little header out and then continue with my thought.
Perfect.
Um, and that is that oh gosh, the last time Saturn and Neptune came into conjunction at this point, according to my research, was 4362 BC.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Wikipedia, because I wasn't there, but according to Wikipedia, which obviously has some sense of having been there, that was the beginning of the formation of ancient city-states,
Mm-hmm.
Sumer, Egypt. Um, and some people can say, oh, this was the beginning of the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can use that word, not to diss the divine masculine, because
Absolutely
that's
not.
not what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. We're talking more about um, groups of basically little baby boys who have been disconnected from their mommy and wanting to control and dominate everything because of their fear of death. And
Yes.
so let's just say that that has been a pervasive intention for 6,000 years. If that's true, I don't know if it is. I mean, it was conjecture, but if that is true, then and I were like in charge of the control and domination, and I'd want to make sure to give everyone a sense of, empowerment enough so they don't rebel, but take away their power so they can't actually rebel. You know what I'd do? I'd talk about heaven. I'd talk about something like you too, if you work really hard and get a good job with mo pay, then you're okay. I'd want to carrot on a stick a few things. I'd want to, I don't know, let people think that they knew all about astrology by putting it outside of any sphere of influence, meaning outside of this planet. If I wanted to, I know this is a little, what's the word, arcane. But if I wanted to, disempower people or sever their connection with the earth, I'd want to take any of the earth religions or sciences or philosophies and find a way to get them away from earth. I'd want them out there. Okay, so now we have astrology as above, so below. Ain't
Hmm.
nothing you can do about the as above. That's fixed. That's there. That's happening. That's going on. And in fact, maybe we should start everything with, I don't know, cardinal male. Yeah, let's make everything begin with Aries. Yeah. So everything starts with Aries, and the energy comes from beyond us that we have no control over. How are you doing? No, astrology work. It does work. It's great. Yeah, zero Aries. Yeah, we can start everything with that, and it is applicable, and it does work. And it is a magnificent, magnificent, beautiful control tactic to say that this beautiful, actually what I would consider divinely feminine art of astrology is ruled by the things beginning with 0 degrees Aries and cardinal male. So no matter what, Pisces, you give it all up and you let go and you go to God, and then it starts again with
Yeah.
cardinal male. And all the energy comes from beyond you. Now, when I start to say things like this, the little stretch between what I'm saying and another form of control, it gets closer. And so I'm going to suggest that even we astrologers who, purport to have an ability to observe the cycles and the rhythms of the stars and can therefore say that, oh, in this year, this thing is going to happen and it looks like this astrologically, and here's my prediction. Even we're gonna be lied to, come from a different angle, and so ultimately we are disempowered, or we have given our power up to an external source that
Hmm.
where we are beholden to the causal effects of Mercury retrograde. And we then in turn say, oh, my car broke down because of Mercury retrograde, and therefore perpetuating the lie that we live in or the partial truth, I must say, that we live in a universe that is fundamentally and primarily cause and effect. That is untrue. We live in a quantum universe where astrology exists as a reflection of what
Yes.
is going on here, as opposed to something external causing things to happen, right?
Yes.
And so, one of the great reckonings, Pluto and Aquarius, one of the great reckonings that we Aquarius astrologers are going to come to, reckoning of Pluto, is the fact that a very large amount of astrology, uh, as a system that we currently call astrology, is actually predicated on some lies and some control tactics. Oh
Agree.
man,
You know what
that's
this is making me think of? So I doing this workshop on Lucifer coming up, and I've done a lecture before, but more on the collective, and this one's more of a personal thing. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I have really been looking, well, I was reflecting my religious upbringing, South Node in Virgo here, and how that is really viewed not just within the asteroid Lucifer, but in astrology as a whole. And I was getting into the Book of Enoch because I remembered growing up and being like, that's so taboo. Like my eighth house was like, I want to know about this and the Nephilim and like, oh my God. And like, but I had this understanding whenever I was going back through jumping down these rabbit holes whenever it comes to this, like what you're talking about, the patriarchy. By the way, they talk about the book in the chapter in Enoch, the Watchers. They brought astrology, and then it was, oh God, no, this is one of the reasons why, besides them, having children with the human women, why the Great Flood happened, la la la. But it was viewed as something that was demonized because humans weren't supposed to have it. So this is going back to exactly what you're talking about, like this is out here and blah blah blah. But the thing that really stood out to me whenever I was going back through, I have like these old books. One's called Cosmic Drama. It's by an old Southern Baptist minister. Again, religious upbringing. I was very much like trying to figure things out when I was younger because I knew that all of that was bullshit, right? Like, but I'm really glad I have these texts because it's given me information to understand some of the why and the causative effects, right, that we're talking about is when we have something to blame it on. Like, the Watchers, they gave us this and now it's terrible and we're not supposed to have it. Like, that's one reason why it gets demonized. But also, whenever it's coming to everything from a Christian point of view, that religious, I would say not just Christian, but a religious point of view is, which started back at this timeline that you're talking about, is that even terrible influences, which a lot of people view, like you said, Mercury retrograde made me do this. This is just a reflection of what's been even taught through patriarchal religions or man-made laws, that it's something that comes outside of you. Therefore, you don't have to take accountability or responsibility for it. You can continue to blame the whatever's going on that instead of actually having to confront and look at what's going on inward. So therefore, you're not nurturing it or planting seeds anymore, right? You're looking there at something that's mystical and can't be grasped and blah blah blah. And so therefore there's never that actual connection with what is actually held within. And this is kind of, I know I'm bringing in kind of some of this, but this is why I love these conversations because somehow whatever I am like going down a rabbit hole, it's like it ties in, can we say it's the stars and they're aligning right now? Maybe, who knows? But like to me, this is kind of, not kind of, I don't want to kneecap this. This is something that you're expressing too about this dynamic. You know what I'm saying? I'm just giving another story or another context to part of this comes from that, which you already talked about, which was that patriarchal movement. So now, yes, please go back into, was that making sense what I was
Yeah,
talking
oh,
about?
100%.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not, out with the fairy, so to speak, whenever it's coming to this, because I find what you're saying very fascinating. And so what I want to ask is, so how do you think that this transit with Pluto and Aquarius is tying into all of this now? Because I think
Yeah.
that that's where you were going, and I want to hear more about this,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
regarding all of this.
Oh, yeah. Boy, if I know that Pluto is about transformation, then all I have to do is just write something like, watch out, Pluto's going to come and get you on March 3rd, and post that at a meme as a meme and get 600 likes, and welcome to the death of astrology.
Yeah.
And now, this is a very, 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 very hot topic because what we're seeing is, I mean, just pull up Facebook or Instagram. I mean, granted, I'm an astrologer, so every, other
The
post or
algorithm is,
whatever, the
yeah.
algorithm is set for astrology for me. But the BS that I see, I'm like, oh God, help us. Oh God, help us. Oh wait, this is not representative of astrology. This is not. The other day, there was some public call. Someone equated Pisces with death. No, I mean, if you take that approach, you could rationalize death with just about any sign. I mean, transcendence, sure, but and it is a finality in some sense, but it's not death. But so there's lots of misinformation that is
Hmm.
being put out by armchair astrologers, people who have, maybe seen a couple of YouTube videos and it made sense to them. And since, they might have a basic understanding of human nature and can relate it to it in a story, all of a sudden, I've saturated the entire field of astrology, discrediting it. And welcome to Pluto in Aquarius,
Yeah.
Aquarius resonant with our craft of astrology. And what does Pluto do? Pluto's job is to bring the darkness to light. Pluto's job is to suppressed, repressed, denied. Hey, call Pluto. We bring that stuff to the surface, no problem. Got an ancient pain or wound? We'll make sure it comes up at the least appropriate time.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's going to
Pluto.
confront.
Yeah, Pluto. And so Pluto exposes the dark side of. We just had Pluto in Capricorn, right? And
Yeah.
what did we see? The incredible dark underbelly of business, conservatism, economy, government, rulership. Who rules the world? A bunch of pedophile mofos.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Pluto
The
in Capricorn.
distortions
Yeah,
of
we
man-made
now know.
law, which is Capricorn.
Yep,
Can't,
exactly.
yeah.
So Pluto and Capricorn showed us the dark underbelly of conservatism, and I think I first heard this exact quote from Stephen Forrest. So I'll say it from him, and then I'll expound on it greatly. Pluto in Capricorn showed us the dark underside of conservatism. Pluto in Aquarius will show us the dark underbelly of liberalism. Ooh, there's a charged statement. But guess
Yes.
what? We're going to be seeing that. Moreover, since
Yeah.
astrology is ruled or resonant with the sign slash season of Aquarius, guess what else? The dark underbelly of astrology is going to make itself known. So,
Yes.
this is my great fear about our craft is that no offense to this is not ageism. This is about the benefits of experience. Like, I don't
Wisdom.
know, a Saturn return or something.
Yes.
It can do
Wisdom.
wonders, you know. But all it takes is, some young person who's learned a little bit of astrology coming out and giving some, therapeutic advice to completely and totally tarnish all reputations for all astrologers everywhere in the universe.
Ryan,
We
you
are not
know,
psychologists.
we are
We are
not.
not psychotherapists. There's and rightly so. I mean, let's face the power of astrology. I mean, I'm an astrologer because I believe in it and I've seen it work. I'm not
Yes.
just trying to sell another, bunch of pussy willow. But, when we really see what's going on with this astrology. Yeah, it is really therapeutic. Yeah, it really can sound like, but we are not. We have to offer things as tone, as suggestion, as this is the way it sounds
Consulting.
like. This is the poetry of it. This is the theme of it. I have seen so many astrologers, and I am actually quite livid about this. I don't know if you can tell, but so many astrologers out there on Facebook saying, "Hi, I'm not an astrologer, but I'm going to give you psychological advice and emotional advice as to how to deal with your relationships, your work, your family, your kids." And you want to know what's happening? We're shooting ourselves in the foot. So I'm very, very reluctant myself to use languaging that sounds like I'm some kind of psychologist and I know what's best, but I
Agree.
am an archetypologist and I will talk about the meanings of these symbols and how they may or may not apply to you. We take that language and we're quote unquote safe. But, first they came for the communists. And
No.
now in my hometown of Minneapolis, they're going after some other folks.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop.
No, they're
Not,
not.
they're going to keep going after who's next, who's next, who's next. Who else is on the list? Astrologers are on the list. Why? Because no offense, if you haven't gone through a Saturn return, I don't know if you can necessarily talk about it. Now, that's a little bit of a generalization. I don't know if I fully believe that. That being said, we have to, as astrologers, be very careful because a reckoning is coming along.
I, again, I'm like kind of blown away that you're bringing this up because um I tend to use certain language because of my background, and yet on my website, I have I think this is, and I've reached out to some licensed therapist, and I'm, side note, trying to organize some of them coming on here because I think that it would be really beneficial because I've had these thoughts, especially Pluto going into Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini ruling that. And it will be squaring the nodes. And so we're going to see some factions within this. These are thoughts that I've had. We're already seeing it. That's the thing about astrology is it doesn't happen when the thing happens. This is something that builds. It's evolving out of something else that's already been seeded.
For
Um,
sure.
but something I've seen is, well, first let me say I have on my website a list of the scope of my practice, right? My mom is an attorney. You know this, I've told you this. My mom did medical malpractice. I have insurance. Whenever I did hair and makeup for years, and then whenever I worked in, um, you know, the therapy world, I had insurance. I still, as an astrologer, I have insurance because it's not regulated, and I feel like it only takes someone trying to be a therapist um, that isn't, that ends up hurting someone and that happening. And so it's better, in my view, especially again, my Capricorn, especially in the eighth house, is very much like I want to talk about these things because I think it's important for other astrologers to understand that there is a code of ethics and we are working within a system, and we need to know how to work within that system, especially because what we do isn't regulated in the same way, and there is a lot of blurring of lines. Like, so even on my website, the scope of my practice, I talk about, I will use language that is archetypal, but it is not, this is about you and you making your own choices. Say I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a psychologist. If I feel like I actually had someone come to me who was talking about a lot of things that were coming up for them and their family, and they felt like I could help them. And I said, I can look at you and focus on you, but I am not a therapist. And I had to email this to this person and say, I really feel like it would be beneficial in tandem with doing this for you to have someone who is trauma informed, that is licensed to talk about this with you. Whenever I have a client, and I just did this because this is what I was thinking about, this is why this is wild that you're talking about this, is if you come on my website and you book a session with me, you are going to get sent a link to a document that talks about the scope of my practice and reiterates it and says that I am not a therapist, and you have to agree to it because what I have seen, just like you, is there are people who are it's one thing to use archetypal language or Jungian terms, which a lot of astrologers do, and that is okay, like individuation and things like that. But there are a lot of people that I see who are trying to create niches, which is a very Aquarian, Uranus, and Gemini thing, where they're wanting to talk about pathologies and group dynamics, and they're catering to people who have experienced this, and those people are feeling that they now have someone who's talking about this, but it's linked to astrology, and yet it is creating an echo chamber that is creating more trauma because that person doesn't have clinical experience, doesn't have the um the degrees and the licensing, hasn't worked one-on-one with another person, and how that's actually very dangerous right now. I feel
Mhm.
like, especially with the Pluto, Aquarius, and Uranus about to square the nodes. And I also find that there are people who, like you said, because they have gathered information from here, and then they're merging it with astrology, they some people have the ability to sound like an authority, to really, and so therefore that is, people are thinking this is an authority. This person has this, and yet they don't. They haven't. They're not a psychologist. None of those things. And so yes, um it opens the door for harm, and it opens the door to completely transform what astrology is. Do I think that that is needed? On some levels, absolutely. It needs to evolve. But I do think that we should have more critical thinking whenever it comes to who we talk to, who's the astrologer, and what are they talking about?
Yeah,
What does their website say? What do they have credentials? What is going on here? Just because they sound like an authority, people need to protect themselves because
for sure.
Aquarius is also trauma,
Yep,
you know?
for sure. And
So,
thank you for all of that. And so, to all those listening, and everyone who's not listening, and you're an astrologer, this is your notice. Do what Jordan says. Or what I have done is I offer a verbal disclaimer at the beginning of each
yep,
reading. I will state my experience. I will state my intention. I will state how this is no substitute for adequate mental health care.
yep,
That this is an exploration into archetypology, and all you're getting is my opinion.
yep.
And any and every person who looks at the astrology could offer a different opinion. So I'm not giving you advice, I'm giving you opinion. You're paying me for my opinion,
It's not
and then
counseling, it's consulting.
yes. And
There's a difference.
and on your taxes, kids and campers, it's consultant.
Yep,
Consultant. That's what you are, that's what you file in your Schedule C or your taxes. Astrologer, careful.
yep,
Consultant, yeah. Next year, I'm going to have environmental consultant. Why? Because I look at nature and I consult. Okay. So, absolutely incredibly important. If you're not doing it, do it now. And if you're not doing it and choose to not do it, I, this is this is your warning that you will be put on the list, and
yep,
you would also be the reason that some of us would be put on some list. So,
yes.
disclaim, I have psychologists that I have taught astrology to.
Same.
I have psychiatrists that are my clients. Who does the psychiatrist call? The astrologer. I love it. It's a little joke, but it's true.
It's true.
Why? Because this stuff works. Why does it work? Because of corn. So, the disclaimer, so incredibly important. So astrology, we're about, I don't know how close we are, but we're getting really close to a reckoning.
Hmm.
And so I want us astrologers to be on the side of of being empowered and not being blindsided. So do the disclaimer, kids and campers. That being said, it also leads, so not just the ethics part, but it also leads uh, to the you know, other little subtle thing, and that is it being cool to be able to tell you something that nobody else might know, or it
The
being
authority.
cool to be able to predict the future, or I was the one who said Trump was gonna blah 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 and look like it did, so therefore, yay. That if if there's anything that upsets, if there's anything that grinds my gears
Your
about
corn?
this is, yeah, it yeah, that anything that makes my masa, it's
Makes my
the
corn pop. No, I'm sorry. I could go on. Okay, sorry.
it's the ego associated with it. It's
Yes,
like it's like, oh wow, I was able to tell you, to zig rather than zag, and you did, and so therefore I'm cool. That's called humility. We need humility. When that says, oh my gosh, I have an ability to decipher these hieroglyphics in a way that can be helpful and empowering to you. Oh wow, this is such a sacred art. Thank you for universe for, giving me the ability to be so helpful and loving to people who may not
yes.
have any other words for. That's what we do. Not like, oh wow, I'm gonna put another flashbang out there and see how many people like, oh, it's so infuriating. And so
Agreed.
that could contribute then to this reckoning that quote exposes us astrologers for, for being quacks. So a little concerned with that moving forward here professionally. Um, but it does, one of the things that does lead one to assume then is that this stuff is getting significantly more popular.
Yeah.
And it is becoming more and more apparent how this stuff actually can work and maybe even be helpful, which of course, is a beautiful, wonderful thing where more people know their primal triad or whatever. And oh yeah, I know my big three. That's really, really cool. But again, that does make me a little cautious for
Same.
the increased scrutiny that would come with it. So a little double-edged sword that way. So it'll be
Yeah, well,
interesting to
especially
see where astrology goes here in the next few years.
it's especially because things have been overgeneralized to such a degree. I think that it's been great for a long time to get people to be introduced to it, but at some point it is needing to evolve out of that. So three things in your chart are not, that's like me saying, you wear glasses, you have blonde hair, and it's long. That's Ryan. Like it's just, it's, that's not the encompassing who you are. That is like surface. And that's, I think, um, as things speed up, which we will see with Aquarius for sure, is that there needs to be a evolution of how we talk about astrology. Um, and to not, one of my mantras, I think especially in the beginning, I would either Moon and Libra squaring Mercury, right? Um, I used to go from one extreme or the other. I used to Moon in the sixth house in Libra. Oh my God, 36-page long explanation of something, right? To then also Mercury and Capricorn in the ninth house, overgeneralizing and really stuffing it down. And so my mantra has been to simplify in a way that someone can understand and not overgeneralize and not taking the essence of what it is that is spoken or communicated or disseminated out, but doing it in a way that's actually helpful without making it, the one size fits all or whatever. And I do feel like that's something that we see a lot are people who, yeah, they are overgeneralizing things, and it is a disservice to what it is that we're doing because you've been studying since 1991 and you're still studying and you don't know everything about it. I don't, I'm still studying. I don't know everything about it. I don't think I ever will. And so for me to say that it amounts to this, this, and this, that's not true or accurate. And also, I think the other thing that I have an issue with is, and you hit on this, is the someone being all knowing, right? Especially because of some type of gift that they have or ability or capacity. And to me, that's a red flag. Um, to be talking about that because that is putting someone, especially someone is when someone comes to you or I, they're wanting help, and yet there still needs to be equity and empowerment. And the goal isn't to have someone who is dependent upon what it is that I am offering my opinion about. It's more about trying to empower them in order to connect with what it is that's they're hearing, what they think that they should do, right? And
Yep.
so if someone is playing the role of, I know this is what you should do, this is how you should do it, again, there's more than one way to get to Denny's. And I don't know. I don't step inside my client's shoes. I can empathize, but my clients know themselves better than anyone else. It's the same thing I tell my kids. You know you better than anyone else. You need to listen to yourself,
For sure.
right? I can
Yep.
offer my opinion, but I do feel like that's something else that people should really be weary of is if someone is approaching you and it is not empowering you, but it is more of delegating and saying that they have this information, because I see that too. That is run Will Rogers like your ass is on fucking fire. Like
Yep.
that's not, no.
For
So
sure. Yep.
anyway,
Also, yep, 100% also in my disclaimer, without giving the whole thing away, I suppose. Also in the disclaimer, I say to my clients, and every single one of them can say, yes, he says this. I say, quote, and y'all can use this. In fact, please use this. I say to my clients, please set up a filtration system over your heart, and everything I say gets filtered through that.
yeah,
And if what I say feels resonant, maybe there's something there. If what I say is not resonant, then toss it out. I'm wrong. I'm projecting something from my own experience, telling you something I read in a book. If it doesn't feel resonant, because, and here's the punchline, and you said it, because you know yourself way better than I know you. I know this two-dimensional picture of a pizza on my computer screen, but you are way more than a pizza, you know. So we
yeah,
say that. And then we
yeah,
know that, okay, yeah, wow, awesome. This person's reading the poetry of the archetypes rather than telling me what I gotta do or else,
yeah.
because that's what astrology has kind of
Fatalistic.
come down to. Yeah, I another thing that grinds my gears is the astrologers that post something that say, watch out, in 3 days this tragedy might happen, or ooh, click on this to avoid certain death. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what some posts can sound like. And
Yeah.
if I even like and probably especially astrologers who've been around for 4, 5, 6 decades, it's really easy because that's the old paradigm, right? Ooh, what's going to happen? Watch out tonight on Fox.
Yeah.
A carrot on a stick, be a good boy and you'll get to heaven. That's kind of been the MO. So watch out, better trust the astrology or else is no different than the priest saying, trust me, I'm just speaking in Latin. You'll just have to, accept the fact that I'm damn. Well, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. I don't want to get too much into that, but you understand what I'm saying.
No, and what I think how this all links back to corn is that an astrologer is a something someone can use for their own growth, but just like when you are creating a garden, right? Some things work and some things don't, right? You can test the soil, you can cultivate some type of compost with like, oh, maybe if I put ashes in here, I wonder what that's going to do. Or maybe I'll put this in here, just to kind of change it up because I'm seeing that this isn't working. Sometimes this can be about needing to, it's the same with, other, you go to a mechanic and you don't like its work. You go to another one. You go to a doctor, you didn't feel heard, you try another one, right? Like, what is it that nurtures you in order for you to blossom, in order for you to experience your own growth, like the corn or the sunflower? Not every astrologer is going to be the thing that helps nurture the soil that you're in, and that's okay. The key becomes to listen to yourself. Something feels off. This doesn't, this didn't feel like it was nurturing me. So therefore, go, it's okay. Like, go
Yeah,
try again. You know what I'm saying?
for
So,
sure, for sure. And whatever you do, don't, and I'll say this in the disclaimer too, don't give me that power. Oh, the
yes,
astrologer said. No, good God, no. The astrologer gave you his opinion, their opinion, their perception, their filter. Everything's going to come through the filter of Ryan. I mean,
absolutely.
as a Sun Neptune partile conjunction, it's easy for me to get out of my own way. But I'm also well aware of the fact that I am Sagittarian, and therefore I know everything except for the fact that I know nothing.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
so I can get out of my way, really well. So much so that I don't ever really remember readings that I say, but I know that if I ever or when I ever catch myself, like even like I have to be really careful even feeling like I did a good job. Like I have to be very mindful of like, oh wow, yeah. And I've heard it and this isn't any kind of tooting or horn is just, factual. I've had people call me up and say, "Thank you. You literally saved my life."
Yeah.
Yeah, and many of us astrologers have had situations like that.
Yes.
And so I and every other astrologer out there have to be really careful, not to be like, oh, wow, I've got the ability to save people's lives. Whoa. We can be like, oh, that's humbling and that's really amazing. And I'm so grateful that I did that. Oh, thank you, universe, for,
Yeah.
helping that energy flow through me. But the second I think, yeah, that's so cool, man. I like keeping people from suicide with the stuff I'm saying. It's like, whoa, we got to really watch out for that stuff.
Agreed. I think also too, I mean, because what you're talking about is having an maintaining or maybe even for some, cultivating natural humility. And I feel like every astrologer I know who has had that experience of, I mean, I had someone who, I tend to attract people who have gone through similar things to me because I am open about communicating stuff. And I sat across from someone one time and she was telling me about her relationship and how hard it was for her. And I told her, I told her my experience of when I was younger because she kept thinking, I know what I need to do, but I can't do it. She already said what she needed to do. And really, for me, it wasn't reflecting, this is what you need to do. It was me sharing with her, you can do this because I will tell you even my experience about what happened. And she was like, that's how you used to be. And I was like, yes. And my point is that everyone has this opportunity to be able to move through something that they feel like they can't do. To me, there is like a healing that comes from that, but yet, like, I'm not like, I'm the reason why this happened for her, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that that day I decided to be vulnerable and share my experience with her. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, it
Hmm.
was her choice. And I'm so glad that I've heard updates and she's in a better place and she got out of that. But never have I been like, that was because of me. Like,
Yeah,
someone because we've all had the experience of, I know whenever I was younger, telling people what to do and being pissed off that they didn't listen to me and the self-righteousness that went down, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that is a dangerous place to be in, right? Because you're putting yourself um, on a pedestal, you're creating a situation where there's not equity and you're creating something that could be a dependency, which is actually not helpful, right? An astrologer is going to want someone to empower themselves, not to depend on them, right? It's
for
to
sure.
empower them.
Yeah,
This is a natural science, and natural science aligns with the natural laws of empowerment,
for
not
sure.
disempowerment. And I think that that's really important for people to understand. And I feel like the other thing is words can wound, especially if we're looking at something and someone didn't ask about it and we're giving too much information about it that is filtered through our opinion. And that's something that I think that I've heard horror stories. I've had people come to me. I was told I was a leader and I hurt people and that's why no one wants to acknowledge me and blah blah blah, and this is what this astrologer said, and that is totally not what I saw in the chart. It's where people can, again, I think it goes back to that overgeneralization and demonization of certain signs and things like that.
For sure.
um and I think that that's really harmful. And lastly, I think what I want to say is that natural humility is never going to be the all-knowing person. Someone who portrays humility, but yet their actions are something different, that's something that we need to have critical thinking about. And it's okay for someone to be acknowledged. Like, even me personally, I wish that I was more acknowledged in this field because, and I'll tell you why, because it means that I would help more people, possibly, right?
For
But I'm
sure.
also not going to do something to get the acknowledgement by being fatalistic, and that's where it comes down to ethics. And because there are things that I could say or things that I could start doing and I could become way more well known, but it's more about being ethical and staying rooted in natural values, right? I think part of me is I have enough Capricorn that I'm like, it's about the climb, man. Like, I know, like, it'll be earned, it'll be fought. It's like the grit that it took and the determination or whatever. But like, and I think it's important, all of us as humans, we have a desire to be acknowledged, and I get it why people do that, but it's also under what parameters are we going about doing that? What are the
Yeah.
reasons for it? Is it because you want to help more people, or is it because you're working out your own wounds of not being acknowledged? You know what I'm saying? Or it could be a little bit of both. It's like, there's all shades, but it's really about checking one's own motivations, which I think is such a very Pluto dynamic, but especially Pluto and Aquarius, especially whenever Uranus enters Gemini and is squaring the nodes, because I think it's really easy to say things and have groups of people rally behind you and validate that, and you starting to think or believe that that is canon, right? Like that's
Right.
it. And it's no. We anyone can have a power of persuasion, right?
For sure.
Anyone can get people to look at what's going on right now, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's about staying within that objectivity and critically asking ourselves constantly, what are my motivations behind this that I'm doing right now? As an astrologer, as a person, as a mom, as a father, as a friend, as a daughter, as a community member, what is the leading motivation behind this? And I think that that's really important, especially since Mars just came into contact with Pluto, on the heels of all of this. So, um, I just want to know what do you want, what else do you want people to know right now that you want to talk about that you feel is important?
Yeah, boy, all that stuff, that stuff that was grinding my gears. I got it out there, and in good old Pluto fashion, spewed a little bit, but I feel better. How about you?
Yeah, I like how it aligns because these are things that I've been thinking about, as you can see, because of, what I'm saying. So it feels good to hear this from another astrologer.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
One thing that you said, and I suppose another thing that I'd like to just very quickly bring up, I guess just as a point of observation in conventional or quote popular astrology, is and I laugh, is to think that any one sign is better than the other, or any one sign is somehow worse or has less favorable characteristics than another. Like, you want to know who gets a bad rap? Virgo. Talk about a most maligned sign. Well, oh, you're a Virgo. Oh, well, have fun being a bookkeeper. You read any new books lately as a librarian? I mean, Virgo can be the brunt of a lot of jokes, but who's gonna fix your car? Yeah,
Yeah.
who's gonna can your beans? Who's gonna make sure the safety standards on your meat are adhered to? Virgo. So now
Who's
tell
gonna
me
tutor who's going to tutor the children when the teacher's not doing a good enough job? That's
exactly
a Virgo dynamic as well, you know?
right. Or Gemini, oh, you're just so surface. Oh, you're just so light. Oh, it's just all about the facts with you. I guess there's no depth with you, Gemini. Ruled by Mercury, the magician and the alchemist. I mean, come on. It's like,
Yeah,
well, wait a second. I mean, by our words we will be justified, and our words we will be condemned. So, does Gemini have any power? Oh, yeah, I think so.
yeah,
So, I just want to I just kind of laugh because it's yet another form of either patriarchal control or, economic control or sexist control or, I know more than you kind of control. It's like to think that, any sign is better or worse. I just kind of laugh. So.
same.
So that's just a little thing I wanted to point out. So if you if you have been maligned by your astrological sign, call the hotline listed below on your screen for immediate and full remediation because
Oh.
there's no place for that in astrology.
No, there's not, because there's a natural expression and a distorted expression of every single sign. And guess what? We all have them.
For sure.
They all come out, and that's where you do the Pluto work and you confront,
Yep, for sure, for
you
sure.
know.
The other thing I want to talk about really quickly, and if I
Yeah,
may shake my astrological finger for a second, and that is the hook of past lives. Now, this is actually a topic in my second book on the nodes. And so I'm going to be careful about what I say here and be relatively uh, speak somewhat gingerly. I am going to suggest that um, we can look at past lives all day. We can look at the horror of what happened. I mean, I did a reading the other day and we talked about 300 past lives, kind of all at once in different iterations of the same
yeah,
different story. There comes a point where that isn't helpful. There comes a point where we can find ourselves dwelling in victim mentality,
yeah,
and we can find ourselves uh, in yeah, blame and caught in the three dimensionality of polarity and causality, and never actually find any kind of remediation. So,
solution.
yeah. So I'm going to just not get into it deeply because, again, I've got a book I've written on this topic and it's going to be somewhat controversial. But I'm going to suggest that if we, and this is more carrot on a stick, I guess, but if we were to understand why we came here in the first place, that uh, precipitated all of those lives, I would reckon that it could give us context for the whys and the wherefores of what we needed to learn in whatever those horrific situations were that have brought us to this point. So I'm just going to suggest the possibility that total and this is you're going to folks might want me to substantiate this, but all I can say is wait for my book. Um,
Totally.
I'm going to suggest that that there are remediative techniques that can circumvent the uh, the need to even review any past life, that there is a an intention for our existence that when we come to acknowledge can give context for every single incarnation we may have had, thus providing for us the potential for a complete, total, and what's the word? Incontrovertible, undeniable, healing, closure, and perspective for every trauma and tragedy that has ever existed in this life or anywhere in our timeline of past lives. I'm going to suggest that there is a simple,
Yeah.
easy, and obvious potential for remediation for them. Uh, so I'm just going to suggest that as a possibility without giving you the punchline. And so also suggest that um, sometimes the dwelling in the experience of the pain uh, might be wholly unnecessary.
Well, it's re-traumatizing. I mean, let me just speak about
Yes.
this. I can give a personal kind of thing. Um, and there's been science that backs this, not in tandem with astrology, but it kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, with this doctor that I have met. But I went to therapy. Again, astrology is not therapy, but I went to therapy from 12 to 27, and I actually quit going because at some point it became where I felt that I even said this. I was like, I feel like I am re-victimizing myself by continuously talking about this, and this. And I took a hiatus from it. And it was because the traditional way was to continuously go back to the past, right? And yet, here's the thing is when we have interpersonal relationships going back to the past, if once we've changed, that doesn't mean that someone else or the outcome is going to change. And so it sets us up to continue to experience the same dynamic, even though we have tools in our toolbox now, right? Because it's keeping us, especially like forgiveness or this or that, like things, it can keep you botched in. And even in traditional therapy, they are finding new ways to help people, new modalities, I think of like EMDR or different things that are actually rewiring instead of them staying in the past. And there's multiple different things that people can do. I will also say, if you go back, if you were supposed to know all of your prior lifetimes, you would have come in knowing them, or there would be spontaneous remembrance, which during my Saturn return, and I will say I did have a lot of recalling. And I remember asking my teacher about it because I was like, I don't get why I am recalling this. And whenever he said this to me, it made a lot of sense. It actually felt true. It was kind of that thing. It was because I couldn't let go. And so I needed to have the awareness. That is not true for every single person. And what I would actually say is, if that is meant for you, it will spontaneously happen on its own. And then the key is to not get hung up on it. It's like, oh, because it's again, you not looking outward, needing to look inward. Well, then that makes sense why I kept doing this. Okay, so now I can shit and get off the fucking pot. Like that's the point, not to be like, oh. Because if we were meant to know, we would come in knowing, right? But most people, if they were to know, they would stay in the past. And that doesn't promote evolution. And so I like that. And I'm excited to read about what it is that you're talking about. And it is controversial. I like it. It's very Pluto and Aquarius. It's you're gonna get pushback because it's gonna challenge people and their own theories and their own beliefs. But here's the thing: any type of science, in order for it to evolve, needs people who are willing to challenge that status quo, um, for it to evolve, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep, for sure. Which
So
takes us to, I suppose, what could be the final comment, is what is the next evolution? What's the next iteration? What's the next evolutionary extension of evolutionary astrology? Now, my understanding of now evolutionary astrology.
it's an
Uh,
umbrella. Yeah.
where did that term come from? Ray Merriman wrote a book, Evolutionary Astrology, in the late
70s.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Martin Schulman wrote a book, Karmic Astrology, 1976.
Hmm.
And that was all on the moon's nodes. So, evolutionary astrology, it's been kind of this umbrella of choice-centered astrology as opposed to a more causal or in a more of a boxed and predictive,
Instead of
you will
descriptive.
do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So evolutionary astrology brought it more into, wow, I have the power to choose. No, wait, I can choose the expression of this archetype. Oh, I'm a Virgo. I can choose to be a master mechanic rather than just the, bitch slave or whatever. You
Yeah.
know, so yeah, all right, and empower. So what's the next iteration? So there's lots of things in my brain with that. The one that I want to bring out in conversation right now is are the words outcome oriented astrology. It's not just so much saying, oh, wow, I have the ability, oh, my moon is progressing through the 12th house. Well, I can either pray or get drunk. What do I want to do? Oh, I suppose this is the better choice. There's evolutionary astrology. Now, the next step to that, my observation, projection, whatever you want to call it, are the words outcome oriented astrology, where we observe these cycles and the rhythms, and we're not just, how do I choose to react to the stimulus, but how do I be more proactive? How do I observe these cycles and rhythms, whether it through Venus returns or Mars returns or Jupiter returns or Saturn returns or progressed lunation returns or whatever it is. How do I use astrology as a template for literally, and we're doing it, haphazardly, but for literally creating the best of all possible lives for myself? So again, right now and what it has been a lot of, stimulus. How do I choose to react? Yay, evolutionary astrology, I can choose Mo Beta. Well, now it's like, well, wow, that I have this, and here tying it back into the beginning of this conversation. Since I have this little kernel of corn called my life,
Hmm.
okay, where do I want to plant that? How do I want to see that diversify? How can I enthuse that? What do I need to take action on? How can I support itself in its strength, diversify again, find its healing? And that's just Capricorn through Cancer. But when we understand that approach and take a look at our larger, bigger cycles of how things unfold based on those choices that we make in the present, wow, we can really start to use this astrology stuff as a and it's been said for decades, but really as a road, not just the road map for life, but an understanding of what the book is really about and how to maximize the choose your own adventureness of that book so that it comes to the you know
Yeah,
healthiest, happiest conclusion possible.
absolutely. I love that. It's gonna be exciting to read your books, Ryan. I love how your brain thinks and operates. You're definitely, I'm smelling what you're stepping in. You know what I'm saying? And I
Benefits and
appreciate,
liabilities to that one.
right? That's hilarious. And hopefully, I can have you come on here again in the future. I would love to do that because this has been so much fun. Um, I will link all of your stuff below for people. And yeah, I would love to continue this conversation, in the future too, because I think that there's so much here. So anyway, thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you so much, Jordan. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Do you want to let anyone know anything before we get off of here?
Yeah, for further information, feel free to visit my website at ryanevansastrology.com. I've got a Patreon where membership and tutoring and classes and daily posts and discounts and fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
Patreon/Ryan Evans Astrology. Other than that, I guess I just like to encourage everyone to do their best to remember the words of Goethe, who said, If everyone swept in front of their own steps, the whole world would be clean. And I'd love to say that astrology is a magnificent broom.
I love it. That's beautiful. All right. Thank you, Ryan.
You're so welcome, Jordan. Thank you.